Hey, what's up, everybody? Hunter Earl back with another great conversation today, joined with OSF Rect, who is my favorite people in Web3. So I really enjoyed this episode. He has pulled off some of the greatest trades that we've seen. Big Bored Ape Yacht Club trade that he pulled off alongside Mando. He is the founder of Rect Drinks. He is the artist and founder behind Rect Guy, and he is, I think, one of the smarter people in the space. And I take a lot of his advice, I think a lot of his takes on the market very highly, and I hold him in high regard. So I hope that today's conversation teaches you a few things. It definitely pointing me in the direction of, I think, how to learn and approach the market, even some resources for where to continue learning about what's happening in the market. We also learn and talk a ton about Rect Drinks. If you're not aware, they just dropped their second flavor. I absolutely love the drink. I tried it in Paris just this past winter, and I was, again, blown away and loved the drink. So I'm looking forward to what they're doing next. His goal is to sell 1 million drinks over the next 12 months, and I think he'll achieve it. And I think you should be paying attention to how he does that with his Web3 and Web2 integrations. As always, thank you for tuning in to these episodes and giving them a listen. And a shout out to today's sponsor, Loot.gg. Make sure you go to Loot.gg and sign up for the waitlist today. And without any further ado, here is OSF Rect. I hope that we can keep the energy going. I hope that I can also keep it fresh, because I think I've tried to jump into a lot of the other live streams we've been doing. I think there's questions or little gaps. I'm like, ooh, that would be a good one. And I think obviously for me, and my mindset as an investor and a builder and somebody who's seen the gambit of all right, taking an idea to product to, okay, now we've got some validation in the market. What does it take though to actually scale? And especially in this industry, I think there's a huge question around, okay, you can scale in Web3, but to really hit the breakout velocity, you have to also figure out your strategy for Web2, CPG, your marketing against each of those. And how do you introduce that, hey, there is a Web3 aspect? So I think there's a bunch of cool stuff. I think easiest for any of my viewers who might not know you, or as we're putting this out there, introduce yourself, and then let's jump into what Rect Drinks are.
Yeah, so I'm OSF. I've been in the Web3 space for about 3 years now. Oh, 4 years now, I guess. Fuck, time's really gone by.
We're getting old, man.
I know. 4 years, geez. But yeah, I kind of started out trading stuff, collecting NFTs, etc. Probably like a lot of people who are still here today. And then I also created a lot of digital art, made a collection called Rect Guy, which kind of went viral. And about 3 years ago, when the markets crashed and everything, and everyone got wrecked, so we kind of built that community that way. And yeah, we ended up, turning that into what Rect is today, with Rect Drinks and Rect Brands and everything. And that's kind of now my main focus, I would say. I still like to trade and kind of be involved with markets. I don't think I can ever lose that stuff. But yeah, my main focus now is definitely for sure Rect Brands.
Your background is in trading, correct? That's where you came from and how you got involved.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I spent 10 years as a trader in TradFi, and I actually got into crypto while I was still at my old job. Quite late. I first bought Bitcoin in January 2021, so pretty late into the game.
Wow.
Having known about crypto for a long time. I first heard about crypto in 2012 when I was backpacking in Thailand, and some guy was telling me about Silk Road and what you can buy and shit, and that's when I first heard about Bitcoin. But I was very crypto skeptic all the way until 2021, when I finally convinced myself to buy some Bitcoin, and then just fell right down the rabbit hole since then.
Yeah, it's an addictive rabbit hole to fall down. But I think what's interesting is you started with Bitcoin, then obviously you guys did really well on NFTs. Bored Ape Yacht Club was a big component of that. Then it got into kind of different little ventures that we saw you investing in, and then out of all this became you becoming an artist, which I don't think you were an artist in any way beforehand, or were you?
So I used to actually make a lot of digital art when I was a teenager, when I was 13 to 18, and there was an art community called Deviant Art back then where you could like post your creations and stuff, but there was no crypto, no NFTs, no real way to monetize it. I just like did it on this. I just did it in my spare time because I enjoyed doing it. I've actually like drawn and even painted a little bit, quite a lot as a kid as well. So, but you know, I turned 18 and I just stopped doing that stuff because you go to university and you do other things that you think are cooler, and then you get a job. And I just never really ever thought I would do that stuff as a career. And it was only when I started collecting NFTs, I was like, maybe I should like try and recreate some of that digital stuff. Now they can do it with an iPad and animate it. And so I just started doing it again, and yeah, it kind of took off in a way which I didn't expect, for sure.
Do you find? I'm curious. Do you find the Web3 space, or like the crypto space, an area where like you can kind of just do whatever? Like it doesn't feel like, I feel like in your normal, like a normal career path, everybody's kind of like boxed into like this is how it's been done, and everybody around you kind of expects you to follow like a certain path. Like here, I feel like you could wake up tomorrow and be like, we're launching fucking, I don't know, like scuba masks, like Rex scuba masks, and like as long as there's a reason behind that, nobody's gonna be like, why are you doing that? It's like, oh, okay, yeah, you do whatever. It's Web3.
Yeah, I think that definitely has an element of truth in it, doesn't it? You can kind of just do anything and apply like the Web3 badge to it, apply some ability to consume to earn or some reward, and then there you go, you just have this like Web3 thing. I think what I would say about Web3 is if I woke up tomorrow and I was like, I want to make a scuba diving mask product, or I want to make a drink, or I want to make plushy toys, you can make an amazing product, but you don't have an existing community or consumer base to sell it to or to be a part of that story or journey. You have to build that from the ground up. Whereas the incentivization mechanism in Web3 allows you to build that community in a really quick fashion. Like if you have some sort of airdrop or some sort of reward, on the first day, you will get at least 10 users, maybe 50, maybe 100, depending on how big it is, right?
Right.
And that's like, other brands will take like months to get their first customer, you know what I mean? So Web3 is a really accelerated way to actually build, in my opinion, IP, build a brand, build a community, build a following. And then once you have that, if you can pivot it and apply that IP into something that's actually scalable into a world beyond just Web3, that's where you can really nail it. And that's where how Luca, I think, just absolutely crushed it. And that's what I think makes this exciting for us now, because when we speak to traditional beverage companies in the drinks industry, it's like, hey, we've already sold out 222,000 drinks, and this is the size of our following. And all of this has come from Web3 and crypto. This is how we've done it, from having zero experience or zero footprint in the beverage industry. That to them is very disruptive and very interesting. And you can show how that growth can scale very quickly. So for us, I think that's gotten us a lot of conversations that we never would have been able to get without having that engine behind us, I think.
I think that's something that should hit home pretty hard at people, of like that is your leverage building in this space. You can be disruptive. You can come up with those little behavioral incentives that you can't do in Web2 to this degree. I'd love to start with the launch of Rec Drinks, because it was one that caught me completely off guard. Of you guys, I mean, I remember being like, all right, I'm going to order a case. And I think, I don't know how much longer after, I remember getting back to my laptop and being like, oh, fuck, like I can only buy it in England. And then me having to call, because I have the soccer team in England. I was like, all right, I got to see if I can get a couple of cases delivered. Like it turned into this whole thing of like, oh my God, like it went from being, I could just buy it to like sold out almost in a blink of an eye. Walk me through the launch, walk me through the strategy there. Obviously we had a lot of big winners on the token, which was a strong, I think, narrative for the launch. But what was your whole philosophy going into it?
Yeah, so what inspired me there was the Solana phone. So the Solana phone was in existence for like a year, 2 years, right? And whatever, it was just there. Like no one really bought it. But every phone had a Bonk airdrop. And when Bonk went to like $1 billion, $2 billion market cap, every phone you could claim like a $500 airdrop from which is worth more than the phone itself. So then when people realized that their phone sold out in like 24 hours, it was crazy. It went
was
from like
crazy.
being this product out there for 2 years to being sold out in 24 hours. So I thought, wow, that's really powerful. And that's like, you kind of see that already within the Web3 space, where it's like, okay, we're going to put a carrot in front of you, incentivize you with an airdrop to come onto our platform. Let's say come onto our L2 and do a bunch of trades, do a bunch of DeFi, bridge capital over whatever it is. And that will then in turn pump that network's revenue numbers, their number of users, all this kind of stuff. And then they get the airdrop. And that's kind of how like Web3 has always worked, really. But I was like, okay, what if you just apply that same thing, but instead of a on-chain product, apply it to like an off-chain real-world product? And I guess the core idea behind it was like, what if people could buy a rec drink or buy a pack of rec drinks, and when they purchase it, they would actually make money on that purchase because they'd claim some Retcoin on the back of it. And that's kind of how it worked with the Solana phone, right? So that was the underlying idea. So had the idea and we kind of like spoke to people about it, and everyone's like, nah, there's no way how are you going to manufacture drinks? Like, how are you going to connect it to have this off-chain aspect, on-chain aspect? And there isn't a perfect way to do it. And I don't think we did it perfectly, but obviously you can't communicate certain things. This legal regime in the US is now a bit better than it was back in October. We couldn't say, buy a box of rec drinks and you will get this much Retcoin, which will be worth this much. Like it was an unknown quantity that we couldn't even really say. So, which is why I think a lot of people faded it, and kind of really just like our core community who kind of knew our patterns and what we would do, kind of backed it. So that was really the main idea. And I think that's why it sold out so fast, because people were like, oh wow, this is how many points I've made from doing these social quests, and now I get this much points from just buying like one pack of drinks for $69. Like,
yeah,
that's crazy. And so we just got that thing where I think they started selling out, and then the FOMO just hit, and I think everyone just kind of went crazy. And we actually, we sold out in the US in under 4 hours, and the stock we had in the UK and Europe was around for a while. We actually reallocated some of that stock to the US, which then got the sellout there in under 48 hours. But yeah, we sold out. It's about 222,000 cans we sold out in under 48 hours. And it ended up being across 32 different countries. So we had a couple of guys in Australia, New Zealand, like Hong Kong, and they were paying like more in shipping than the cost of the drink just to like get it there, which is really crazy. But it was all things considered, it ended up being a successful launch. And we had this crazy idea, and I was like, I don't know if it will actually work. And you never really know until you do it. But we got it over the line, and it was a good start to the journey, I guess.
Man, it a very good start to the journey. I have to also applaud you. I've tried the drink. At Paris was actually the first time I had tried it. And oh my God, I think for most people who haven't drank like flavored sparkling water, I think Liquid Death, when they first came out with it, I was like, I faded it so hard. And then I was like, oh, this is okay. But that initially turned me off. I was like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to like it. You guys have crushed it with the flavor profile. It doesn't, it actually still is like good. It doesn't, you're not like, ugh, like there's like aftertaste. But also to the point where I think you've mentioned on some other streams, like it's a good mixer still. Like it still has enough flavor there where it's healthy, hydrating, and like it can be complementary in alcoholic drinks. I think it can't be understated. You guys have done very well there. What was the process for like built? Was it a long one? I'm curious like how you landed on the flavor of lime. Like it's the CPG side of this is fascinating to me.
Yeah, it's a good question, because lots of people have asked me this, and they've had similar comments to you. It's like, oh, this is so great. Like, how did you guys make it? What was the process? Did it take you a long time? It was really just like, for us, it was like, we just kind of made it up on the spot kind of thing. like none of us, I have to reiterate, none of us have any experience in the drinks world. And like, we now have an advisor and we have more contacts there. But at the beginning, we were just like, I was like, okay, let's make a drink. Okay, cool. How the fuck do we make a drink? I don't know. Let's find out. And eventually we found the person who makes recipes for drinks. And she was like, you go there to this lab, and she will make recipes for you. Then you test them, and you tell her what you like, what you don't like less sweet, more sweet, different ingredients. But she was like, you need to have an idea of what you want to have. You can't just come to me with like a blank slate saying, I want to make a drink. So we're like, okay, well, what do we do? And I think we just like, okay, lime is what's the least offensive flavor? Like something that everyone will drink, the most universal thing. And lime, I think, is just a classic.
It'd been wild if you guys have come out of the gate with like pomegranate or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I really didn't want to be too rogue. And I think lime is just simple. It works really well as a mixer. It's something everyone can get on board with, and it kind of has that health kind of feel to it. So, okay, well, let's make a lime drink. And we went to the recipe person, and she's great, by the way. Like, she's made the recipes for many well-known drinks in the UK and also in the US. And that's been all hats off to her for designing this, to be honest with you. But we're like, okay, we want a lime drink. We want it to be sparkling. We want to have low sugar, taste good. And that was it. And then basically she's like, and as we were like, we wanted to have something that's not just like a little bit of like something extra, a bit of a kick. So we're all in this lab, and she makes this. It's the first one she makes. She's like, okay, try this. And we were just like, that's so good. Like, that's amazing. But let's try some more other flavors. We tried the other ones, but it was really that first one. She kind of just like smashed it in one go. So
that's so rare. That's so rare. Because I've been involved with like a bunch of seltzers that have gone to market, and I'll tell you, it's like not till like the fourth or fifth time that you've like gone and done the tasting, you're like, okay, you finally got it right. Like everything else is so bad. That's so rare to hear that.
She killed it in the first go. And so we took away like I think 4 different versions basically, and we did a family and friends taste test kind of thing, and we made them all blind, so no one knew what the ingredients were. I think we had like lime and raspberry, lime and pineapple, lime and coconut, and the lime and pineapple one, so the other ingredient in it is pineapple, was the one that people liked the most, overwhelmingly actually. Like everyone just loved that one, and that was the first one she pulled out. So I'd love to say there was like some crazy like methodical process of getting there, but we just kind of got lucky. We shot in the dark, and we kind of somehow hit the target, which is kind of crazy. But it's not. That's kind of how we've done everything with Rect. There's never really been like a huge structured plan behind it. I think until now, really, and we've kind of just got lucky with things. We've done things organically, and that's kind of been how things have gone well, I think, because it's always had that organic feel because we haven't pushed it, and it's kind of cool to do that with a drink as well, I guess, and just get the flavor right on day one.
So you guys got it right. The new flavor that is coming out is an apple flavor. I think people will be able to buy it shortly here. The fact that you guys are iterating so quickly, the fact that it sounds like you're ramping up production, distribution, partners, etc., super exciting. Going off of the first question on like, hey, how did you use Web3 and this incentive, like buying, you'll get, a token back, and that could potentially, it's more than zero. I don't think anybody understood or was able to like come up with like, hey, this is exactly how much I'll get back in points. But going forward, there is still this sense of, all right, how do you keep it going? And I think that's where a lot of projects and founders right now are messing up or are scratching their heads on like, okay, I can create interest and incentive for a initial airdrop, but then what do I do after that that's sustainable? How do I create loyalty? How are you guys approaching that? Is it something you recommend others do? What's your take?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And look, I've been in crypto long enough to understand that there's diminishing returns to the reward system. There's the inflationary aspect of it. You can't keep it going forever. And the first one is always the most powerful one. How do you keep it going, basically? So the way that I viewed it was like, okay, we have this like first drop, and if we can sell out on that first drop, we can make some noise in the traditional beverage industry, and then we can get the right partners to help us with distribution and growth and prove to them the size of the community, the engagement we get across socials, and all that kind of stuff. And we've kind of achieved that. The second thing is you want to make people think and make people believe, just like I believe, that there's actual growth in what the reward is. And so, Rec token is at whatever, $21-22 million FTV. I think we peaked at 120 million back in December or something, and we're down with the rest of the market. But in my opinion, and I want to be careful about speaking too highly of my own token, but in my opinion, like that to me feels like a pretty convex bet. Like if you're able to buy a drink and drink it and earn Rectcoin at 20 million FTV, if we do really well and succeed at this stuff and start hitting our targets on drink sales and getting into the traditional world and actually building the drink side of things, the value of that can be a lot bigger. Like you have real upside in that. It's not just another NFT. It's just the same thing. And it slowly gets divested over time as the token supply comes out. But there's some real growth in that. So I think that's one thing I would say to where we are right now. Okay, so then you say, what happens if Rectcoin goes to $1 billion? How are those rewards still good when you're getting it at that at
Right.
that level? And that's where I think these collaboration drops come in. With Abstract, you're going to be able to earn Abstract XP from each drinks purchase, and being able to partner up with other projects that potentially have tokens coming up that want this level of social and physical engagement that we can produce with Rec Drinks. We can do more of these collaborations. And now that we've done this process a couple of times, we can be pretty quick in packaging things up and getting it out there. And we have more drops. Well, we have more collaboration drops coming up this year, pretty soon actually, that I think are going to be well received. I think with a couple of big projects. So that's a really good business model for us because we can continue to make the drinks revenues. We can continue to get attention, continue to get new community members as part of the Rect ecosystem. It's great for the people we're collaborating with because we have a big community we can bring onto their network and their platform. And I'm on 16 different Abstract streams over these 2 or 3 days and talking about how good Abstract is. Hopefully that's beneficial for that, and they can have the drinks at their events and everything. And it's a really good, I think, physical brand enhancer. So it's something we didn't originally plan to begin with, but it's gone so well with Abstract. And to be honest with you, hats off with the team for being so helpful and getting this stuff up and running and helping us out on making this successful. But that's a way I think we can keep the stuff going where it's not just getting Repcoin, but you're getting other stuff and you're getting introduced to a brand new community. I think as our community grows, with each drop, we can kind of be we have a big community we're going to bring onto your ecosystem through the medium of Rec Drinks, which is something that I think can work pretty well, I think, and kind of get over the whole diminishing returns aspect of it.
Right. There's always a new way to keep it going in some sense, especially when you're collaborating with partners. Are we going to see a pudgy penguins drink, like Pudgy Peach or something like that?
We definitely should. I would love to do that. I would really love to do that. I think it would be a pretty cool drink. So let's get the Abstract one done first, and then we'll tackle the next one.
I guess on top of that idea of abstraction, you guys on the point side, I know when I got the drink, there was a QR code on the drink that you could scan and earn points. Your loyalty system is all in-house, correct? You're doing points, and then Abstract is its own separate thing of getting XP there. And that also kind of leads you into we've seen Cato do this really well, which is this whole idea of all right, how can you incentivize a community to go vote, to earn points, or to yap and talk? Is there an a non-use incentive that you guys are planning to do in the future that you don't think anybody else has done that being a CPG unlocks for you? And obviously the purchase of the cases was a somewhat unique one. We have seen purchase to receive. But I'm curious, even on the content side, I've noticed you guys have done some stuff around the golf world, influencer marketing. When it comes to user generated content, is that one? I'm just trying to figure out where the unlock from a CPG standpoint is for you guys.
Yeah, it's a good question. We have about 40% of the supply of Rect tokens still held by the Token Foundation, and
oh, wow.
it's a lot, and
Yeah,
that's earmarked.
yeah, yeah.
That's earmarked for community. It's all earmarked for community, and obviously some of that goes into these drinks drops. But I think we can start to use some of that as reward mechanisms for community. So it's like, let's say here's a bounty for getting a famous celebrity to drink the drink and post it, on their socials. Here's a bounty for the person that gets it into their local store, their local pub, their local bar. We can use these things to sort of like empower and turbocharge the community. And I think that's going to be, I would say that's going to be phase 2 of what we're doing. I think phase 1 right now, we have the right contacts, the right pieces in place. I think on the traditional supermarket side and getting things in a world where people are like, oh wow, I can't believe rec drinks are here. That's huge. I think we're on the right path there. It just takes a bit of time, but I really, really do believe we're on the right path. So focus is getting that done first. But then it's also about enhancing that experience as well. So like, as you mentioned, in NFT Paris, we had something where you could actually scan the can and claim rec coins straight away in in 3-4 taps, whatever it was. And so in my mind, it's like the ability of, let's say we get rec drinks into tier 1 supermarket in the US, which has become more crypto friendly, and for every can you're able to scan it and claim some rec coins or whatever it is. And I think the nice thing about our tokenomics is we can say, claim 1 million rec coins, which is worth whatever it is, like a few cents right now, but it feels like a lot, right?
Right.
I'm claiming 1 million rec coins, and that's like a huge onboarding mechanism. It's a huge marketing mechanism. It's very, very powerful. And I think that's what we're on the path to doing. It's just about having the rails in place to do it in a way where it can't be exploited, if that makes sense. But
Right.
The worst thing is like someone hacks it and takes, North Korea hacks it and takes 40% of our Bitcoin, and then we're screwed. So
I know. When I was doing some research on what you guys have done, because I do think from like a founder perspective, you are a founder that should be studied. I think very smart in tune and makes conscious business decisions. But from the brand perspective, you guys have made some choices that I think are very, very smart. I kept coming back to like old like Coke incentives of like, okay, what did they do originally? There are like the famous one of like the 1,000,000 mile guy who like got all the miles and it was like lifetime fly anywhere for free. And then I think there's a lot of interesting early on incentive programs that have worked that will mirror, I think, the path you guys are heading down, as I can kind of hear you talk around some of the plans that are to come. But you guys are focused mainly here, it sounds like, on getting distribution. That is it isn't going the direct to consumer. It is like, hey, we want distribution at scale through these retailers.
Yeah, I think we'll have both, but direct to consumer is great because you can make a ton of gross profit margin. Like we made all the gross profit margin from the last sale. And
right.
The reality is when you go through distributors and wholesalers, you give up
a lot.
Most of it. Yeah, you give up a ton of it. But the drinks business is a revenue game. It's like, how can you grow your top line as much as possible and get as much market share? And it's like the drinks business is kind of like booming on these functional drinks. Like you had Poppy, which I think was bought by Pepsi for like $1.5 billion. You had Ghost Energy that was acquired for $1 billion last year.
Yep.
You had Olipop, which raised at like a $1.9 billion valuation. Celsius as well is another one, which is I think $1.5 billion. So it's like crazy numbers, right? So I think we have to, in order to get to that level, which is our aim, that's our target. We want to get to the level, these levels of these guys. We need, number one, we need to have products that are functional. So rec drinks in the form of flavored sparkling water is not going to be the end of the story. We're working on more stuff right now, which will come out later this year. And number two, we need to just be in like the biggest stores, every biggest store in every country possible, even if we're not necessarily like making a ton of money on those sales.
Right.
It's just about
market share and revenue. Yeah,
exactly. So that has to be a focus for us. And that's kind of like, right now we have that exclusive kind of feel. It's like, oh, I can't buy rec drinks anywhere. It's, just from the website, everyone's asking all that kind of stuff. And that's good, I think, for building like the community and building the excitement around it. And it's a case of then transitioning that, I think, to more of a, okay, how can we just get this in as many places as possible, which also in turn acts as like a marketing vehicle as well for the Rect
Right.
brand.
I'm curious, as you guys grow, where does the attention to like being a web, like, because obviously you are a Web3 enabled brand, does that start to get pushed in, like, abstracted away more and more, and like it's less like, hey, we're the first Web3 drink, to we're just a drink and you don't even know it, but there's a whole Web3 back end to this? Is that end goal?
It's a really good question, that, because I think some people are still very skeptical of crypto, and especially, Web 2 content creators. We've been speaking to people on that side of things, and some people have literally just said no because of the crypto aspects. Like some pretty big gaming streamers, like, no, I don't really want. I love the drink, I love the project and everything, but because of the crypto aspect, I don't want to take the personal risk of being associated with it in case something bad happens.
Yep.
So that part of it is tricky. I think you can't just hide things, you can't ignore things, and it's just about telling stories, and maybe you tell a certain story to a certain audience, but I think it's just about telling the crypto story in a way where a normal person understands it and believes in it and realizes it's not a scam, and it's actually a way to enable everything that we're doing. And part of that is, I think, longevity. It's about like, okay, these guys didn't just do a quick thing for a couple of months and then rug it and then leave. They've been doing it for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And for us, like, Rect as a whole has been going for about 3 years now. So I think within the Web3 space, we have that trust because people know that I'm not just going to rug it or walk away like I'm fully doxxed.
Well, yeah, your name alone, I think, has established that you're not going anywhere, and there's a real authority behind it.
Right. But in the Web 2 space or in the traditional space, no one knows me. So it's about building our presence there and telling that story. So then people realize, like, oh, okay, like, these guys are a crypto enabled brand and they've used crypto ideologies to help themselves grow and reward their community. But they haven't just been doing it. They weren't just a one hit wonder. They haven't just been doing it for 1 year, a couple of months, whatever. They've been doing it now for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And, I've had 4 years in crypto to build this reputation. I may need 4 years in the traditional space to build that reputation. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But I don't think hiding the crypto stuff is the way to go. I think it's just telling the story over time to get people to trust us will give us the best shot of doing it, which I hope tells a good story. Better crypto success stories, I think, is a good thing. And I hope it helps people change their view on the space if they have a negative view right now.
I think that's a very base take. Yeah. I think there's a lot of people that would say, and I think the general consensus for a lot of people are like, no, like, you have to like hide it to an extent. But I think you're viewing this as like a steward, like you're onboarding and presenting it in the right way, and then just saying like, all right, you don't have to be scared. Like, this is being managed correctly. As you guys are growing, obviously there's more outside of what you're doing with Rect that I'd love to touch on. You've been pretty vocal on the markets recently. Obviously taken some contrary bets. I think when a lot of people were exiting certain tokens, we don't have to name any. I know you mentioned like stepping back from naming specific tokens has been good for your mental health, I think. But you started buying in. I think your outlook is one of Trump backed into a corner, probably is the best way to put it, where there's really one direction he can only go at this point. The Fed probably has a certain direction long term they can only go. I think you'll see rate cuts maybe towards the end of the year. Is that generally how you see things playing out, I think, from a market standpoint right now?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I run the risk sometimes of being someone who's always bullish, and I think I'm conscious of that. So you have to be cognizant of the market. And, I think I advocate a lot for taking profits in 2024. And I took profits when things still went higher, but at least you want to have that money in the bank. And when you have a big drop, like in my last, whatever it is, like 15 years of being in markets, every time you have a big drop, it has always been a buying opportunity. It just always has. And at the time, it may not feel so. It may feel like, oh shit, this news is really bad. This is why we've dropped, and things are going to get worse, and it's going to be the end. It always feels like that. But you don't get given these drops without bad news. And you don't get given the great big pumps without good news. So if you wire yourself into thinking, oh, I'm only going to buy things on good news, which is what a lot of people do, you're never going to get these crazy levels where you buy things at super cheap prices, right? You're never going to get it because you actually have to buy them at bad levels. And sometimes you have to buy them at bad levels when even you don't know what the outcome is. And, just like this tariff stuff, I was like, well, I kind of have a view that Trump is going to have to fold. I kind of have a view there's a Fed put, but I don't know, like it could, where's the bottom? It could go even lower from where I am. But
Right.
if I sit around and wait for that good news, I'm going to miss it. I'm going to end up buying at a much higher price. And I'd much rather just use chips to DCA and average down until it gets to a point where you can't anymore. Everyone gets to that point at some point, and then you just have to hold, and you have to be patient, and you have to wait. And that's just the reality of the situation. You can't be perfect on everything. If you were, we wouldn't be here. We'd probably be on a beach somewhere, like drinking like margaritas and stuff. So, that's where. So like my thing is like, if shit drops off a lot, if you have a big backup, then I just add risk, and that's what I did this time. And to be honest with you, we bounced back much faster than I thought we would have. Like things resolved pretty fast. And
Was not expecting that on my end. Got caught a little bit with my pants down, but
yeah,
I don't think anybody was expecting this, a real V bounce right back.
Exactly. I think everyone, including myself, was like, it's not going to be a V-shaped bounce. It's going to be a slow grind. You have time. But it's another example of like, when shit goes down, you just got to buy it, close your eyes and buy it. And in crypto, it's a bit more difficult because, in equities, you can generally buy most equities and they'll go up because they're real companies. But in crypto, it's like, well, what if you buy a meme coin and it never comes back, or an altcoin and that never comes back? So it's harder to find the things that you perceive will outperform Bitcoin. That I think is the more difficult challenge for me than knowing when to buy. I've obviously talked about AI tokens. I think that stuff can see a bounce, and some of it has. I bought some fart coin because clearly it was just the fastest horse, and I just had to have exposure to that, having faded it for a long time. So that's the harder part. But yeah, just sometimes I was out the money on so many of my buys, and I'm just like trying to wire fiat back into crypto, which I haven't done for a long time, to keep averaging down. It's just like, it gets bloody, and I'm not sitting here saying I was doing that with great confidence and I never flinched and that was fine. Like, you do it and it feels horrific, but I always know when I feel like that, that's when I should be buying, because it's going to come good at some point. Yeah. The ones that feel the worst are always the best prints.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think that's kind of where the meme for oh, he's sold, pump it, it is in that moment where you're hovering the sell button and you're least confident in your trade. That is ultimately probably the best time to buy in most cases. Obviously there's a huge asterisk on that comment, but you should be waiting for that blood, that painstaking moment as almost signal of, okay, there is good news that can follow here that puts it higher. I'm curious, from your perspective, obviously being a trader, a question that you probably get asked a lot, but maybe I'll try to phrase it differently, is I think everybody asks, well, how do you know, how are you arriving to that idea? How are you arriving to that trade philosophy? What is, outside of going and getting a job in finance and learning some of the discipline and techniques that are used, what is your suggestion for people to be able to decode what is happening in the market, or at least maybe what your strategy for that is?
Yeah, I think it's really important to have an understanding of macroeconomics. It's just, crypto is a risk asset, and risk assets move based on various macro factors. It may not happen on a day-to-day basis, but over a long-term basis, it's important to have that overall picture. I don't necessarily trade day-to-day that way, but I will have my overall risk ideas and length of positioning based on that. So having an understanding of that is important. It's difficult to say, where do you go to learn that stuff? And I honestly think one of the best resources for it is the Real Vision guys. Raoul Pal is awesome. Julian Bissell's amazing with his charts and stuff. Like, you may need to have a basic understanding to understand what they're saying, but that is some of like the best macro content I think out there, which is very relevant to crypto, which I would say is like industry grade content. Like, that was the kind of stuff I would get from my desk analyst when I was back as a trader, where I'd be like, cool, I'm glad I knew that. Now I can go out and do this. Like, and these guys are all ex-TradFi guys as well. So it is, I think, the best content, because their stuff is not just, it's not just like random research reports you read, which doesn't help you trade or not telling you anything. They're giving you indicators that will potentially predict price action, and they may not always be right. Like, no indicator is perfect, but
Right.
having an idea of like all the different indicators and seeing where they are will give you a sense of like where things are moving and which direction they're going in. So that's definitely a big recommendation. And I honestly think like just taking a basic macroeconomics course or watching YouTube videos in macroeconomics and just understanding how foreign currency works, understanding how interest rates work, and understanding how equities work, how equities are valued, how cash flows are important in that context, how interest rates affects cash flows, and how that affects tech stocks. Like, understanding those mechanisms and that fundamental understanding is really, really important, because then you can jump to the conclusions you need to much more quickly than other people, because most of the retail market may not know that. Like,
it surprises me. I even saw somebody reply to a Wizard of Soho tweet yesterday, and it was about the bonds market, and they're like, "Well, wouldn't this be like good for Bitcoin?" He's like, "No, no, no." Like, and I was like, "All right, that's basic macroeconomics. You probably should know trading risk assets." Yeah, I think that's a good point. You gotta. I think the macro has become a bigger and bigger part. And I think also the fact that you can make the argument that we're more and more kind of aligned to the general market at this point. We're not kind of like isolated and off doing our own thing as like the crypto guys, and that you have Wall Street, you have institutions also looking and trading based on the macro further solidifies that as an area to study.
You gotta, if you want to be good at something, you have to put in the work, and part of that work is usually research. I think one thing I would say, the only counterpoint I would say to what I just said is, you don't want to be so over researched where you think you know everything and you're trying to rationalize and explain things, because the best performing assets within crypto sometimes have your meme coins, but which don't have any explanation sometimes, and you just have to be like, okay, this is going higher because it's going higher. There's no explanation for it. I've got to buy because it's going higher. So I think it's important to have an understanding of it. Like, what I'm saying is to understand what all these things mean and how they all interact, but don't make your entire personality and trading strategy around it, because it's not, understanding it is important to then make your decisions, but using it to make your decisions is not the same thing and not always successful, if that makes sense.
Don't become a macro maxi. Don't.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
On the other side of the market, I think there's the venture market, which you've been pretty active with. Recently, I think you invested and helped launch Yeet, which I think I also kind of wanted to touch on, like the gamification side that we've seen within crypto. And I think obviously the gaming side or the gambling side has always been hand in hand. Do you mind touching on that? Also, how you see the venture market shaping out right now? I think you, more than anybody, have seen the good and the bad of the venture side, and we've been alongside each other for some of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So Yeet is something that Mando and KBM wanted to do, and they spent I don't know, best part of a year and a half doing it, basically, which is pretty a long time, which is pretty crazy. So it's just like a crypto casino, basically, and I think they have a lot of good ideas for it, and obviously a good market and mind share for it and pushing it. So hats off to them for getting that over the line. And then the venture market is an interesting one. Like, I've still kind of feel like I'm new to it. Like, I think the first thing I ever invested in was Yuga Labs at the top of the market at like a $4 billion valuation or whatever it was. And I think everything I invested in that time, I put money into a few different things then, and all of them basically zero, apart from one thing, which was Blur, and that ended up being a good win for me. And that was my first kind of win, I guess, on the venture side. And since then, I would say probably only really had like 2 or 3 more wins that have been good. Like Portal was a good one.
Portal was good.
It's kind of it, really. What are the other ones? I'm trying to think what the other ones are. I've done a lot, so it's tough to always remember them. But something that I found is that you'd invest. What I found is you had that period of like end of 23, beginning of 24, where Portal went crazy and everyone's like, fuck, I need to just do this like angel stuff and get my tickets in. And what you realize is like you're kind of investing money in a hot market where valuations start to creep up quite aggressively. And then you're like, well, you do the math, and you're like, well, there's still a good valuation, it's still going to be worth this, it's still going to be fine. Then you realize you have the risk of teams executing and getting the tokens out in time, which, you know,
rarely happens.
Yeah, 9 times out of 10, everything is delayed. So that drags on. Then you realize you don't get anything at TGE. So you don't, unless they have perps or something which you can short on the other side, which is kind of like not really cool as an investor. You can't really monetize it. And then so by the time you invest and you get your tokens over the next 2 or 3 years, unless they've like completely crushed it, you don't make that much money. And we've definitely had some investments where like tokens are now finally starting to vest and we're like, cool, we've made 20% or 30%, or maybe we're down on some of them, which is fine. Like in the traditional world, they'd be like, oh, great, 20% is great. But like, if you think about how that capital could have been used in that time,
right? Yeah,
in liquid assets.
Yeah, Farcoin, for example. I look back at a lot of stuff and I'm like, you know what? I'd be sitting on a little bit more money right now if I had liquid.
Dude, even just Bitcoin. We're putting money and stuff in like Jan, Feb 24, where we've made like barely anything on it, and you could have bought Bitcoin then and done like a 3x, right? Like 2.5x. Like it's something liquid that you can literally monetize and walk away from without any guilt of selling or anything like that. If you haven't even thought about that yet. So after that, I kind of held back on putting in new tickets. I think Portal was really good because I put money into that in November 23, which was like, okay, they're raising at a valuation which is still really low, but you can kind of see the market taking off. And by the time the tokens would vest, and it would be good. And fair play to Joe and Don and those guys, they actually launched the token and executed it on it and got it out in time when the market was still strong. So the founders did a good job there and actually getting it out. So that ended up doing well. But it's for every one of those, you have 10 bad ones, 20 bad ones, whatever it is. So for now, for me, I think like it's a sentimental thing. Like if I like the project or if I think it's cool, then I'll put money in. If it's someone I want to support, I'll put money in. But if it's to make money, I think it's a really big hurdle for me right now.
Yeah.
A lot of things have to, line up for me to put money into something like that, I think now.
Yeah. I would agree with that sentiment for sure. It's hard. It's a really hard industry right now, especially if you're being aggressive with valuations to have a good exit for investors. But obviously you guys have executed well with Rect. You got the token out. I think people are very happy. I think the valuation from my perspective right now is it's incredibly appetizing if you think you guys can execute, which I think you guys have proven time and time again. I think even I see it in the chat even here. People want hats. They want to rep the brand. There's love for it. I want to rep it. I want a Rect fridge. I want like a light up green Rect fridge for like behind the street. Like you guys have done well. It's incredible. Are you guys gonna do a merch drop at some point? Like
we will, yeah. So we've done the drinks. We've got flavor sparkling water. We will have more drinks, which will be different. So they will kind of be down the functional path of things, which is the kind of like the hot section of beverages right now. We'll have other products that aren't just drinks that you can consume, whether it helps your energy or focus or anything like that. So all that stuff is in development right now. and we'll have merch. Like I think being able to rep merch is a really big part of identifying with the brand. I think if we just did merch to begin with, it wouldn't have really worked as well. Whereas now you have the whole drink story out there, people now feel more inclined to buy it. So yeah, I do see comments asking about the cap and stuff. So far, we've given out this merch for free at events, but we will have merch available from our store hopefully soon. Currently in the process of designing it and getting it so it's at a good quality and something people will want to have. But yeah, not in the not too distant future, you'll be able to buy merch and lots of other products from the Rec store.
Dude, I'm excited. I'm excited. It's really great. I know we have a code here. I don't want to wait till the very end. I know a lot of people have been asking for it. I don't know. Do you want to say it and let people know how to claim it?
Yeah. So the code is goggles, GOGGLES, and if you go onto rewards.recdrinks.com and sign up, make sure you're signed up there. You can log in with your Abstract Global Wallet, and when you purchase drinks, you'll be able to claim drink points. When you do the social quest, you'll be able to earn points. If you type in this code, you'll be able to earn 500 points for free. So if you're not signed up, go sign up. If you're signed up, goggles is the code to redeem it.
Why is that a reference to my scuba comment?
I think it's reference to your PFP, maybe.
Oh, okay.
I think your penguin has.
Yeah.
I guess they're shades, not goggles.
Yeah, he's got the Kobe goggles on.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's reference to that, basically.
Oh God. Too funny. I think we've covered a ton on what you're doing personally, what you see the market doing. I'm curious from your eyes, what we've talked about AI, we've talked about the macro. Are there any areas right now outside of what you're doing that you're like, this is super interesting to me? You don't have to even be buying, but like, I've talked to some people and they're like, nobody's talking about generative art right now. And obviously you just sold your autoglyphs, so maybe that's not the place to start the conversation. But I'm curious for these like rare edge cases where people are like, I haven't made up my mind. I'm looking at it. I haven't decided yet. Do you have any areas of the market where you're just like, I'm looking, but that's it?
Yeah, I do think I didn't want to sell my autoglyph, but it was I managed to get quite a big tax loss from it, and I was kind of like tax loss harvesting. I'm going to buy it back. I'm going to buy an autoglyph back. I think people made fun of me and stuff from it, and it reminded me of when I sold 2 Fidenzas to buy Whiff, and I just made like a ton of money on Whiff. But I'm not saying this is going to be the same thing, but it would be nice to like make money on the token that I bought and then buy the autoglyph back and still have that capital. I think that's kind of what I'm thinking. We'll see if it works or not. So
right.
I just know that some of these tokens will go up a lot in the short space of time, and autoglyphs will be around. It's a slower cook.
Yeah.
But I do think I'm still really bullish on stuff like autoglyphs and generative art. I think art as a concept has been around, and collecting as a concept has been around since the history of time. And digital art is still in its infancy, and you have an opportunity now. Like, imagine someone could tell you can buy the first ever oil painting, or the first ever sketch, or the first ever, I don't know, like sculpture or whatever it is, right? Like, that's what we're in right now with digital art. You can buy the first ever of something at relatively affordable prices. I mean, depends, how you define affordable, I guess, but like prices that aren't crazy. And I think eventually this stuff will become digital artifacts. I really do believe that. And it's just a slower curve. Like, it's not gonna, now that we had the 2021 run up, we had the crash, we've had some slow recovery, it's just a slower cook. So you don't have to jump into it right now. But I do believe in 10 years or 20 years, some of the stuff is going to be worth, millions, tens of millions. I think autoglyphs are in that category because they're just very historically significant and they're culturally significant. But something to be deemed historically significant, a lot of time has to pass by definition, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So I do think it's a good time to accumulate that stuff. But if you're trying to create wealth in the next 6 months, 12 months, maybe even 24 months, that's not necessarily where you're looking. But if you're trying to create wealth over a longer period of time, it might be worth allocating some profits to a bucket of those things. Rare Pepes, for example, is another thing which maybe is a lot cheaper that you can buy and hold for a long time. That I think is also really fun to collect. So that I do think is an overlooked part of the market. I think DeFi is interesting too. I think with the way the regulatory landscape is changing in the US, if you ever get the fee switch turned on for DeFi tokens, so let's say you own the Uniswap token, you can start earning a profit share from what they're doing. That I think is very powerful. So that's another thing I think is potentially overlooked as well.
Yeah. What's your take on tokens made in the USA that we've seen? I mean, I know Pengu's fallen under that guise. We saw Pengu pump pretty hard recently. Are you also like aligned on like, hey, if that switch gets flipped for like capital gains taxes or something like that, you should be paying attention there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I think America has the crypto tailwind behind it right now, despite what's happened with tariffs and everything. I think you shouldn't ignore what's going on with the crypto committee, with David Sachs, the commentary that's come out of it, the SEC pulling back on what they were doing. So, yeah, I would have and you can see what Trump's doing with this Americans, tariffs and stuff. Like, it's going to be the same with American-made coins, if that makes sense. So, I would definitely, focus on that kind of stuff. And don't forget, Rect Brands Inc. is a US company as well. So.
I was about to say there's one other US token that I was holding off on getting to the point of, but
Exactly.
Look, OSF, I know you got another obligation here at 4:00. I want to thank you for coming on. Guys, if you didn't already, make sure you know the code is Goggles, GOGGLES. And if you haven't, obviously make sure you're following OSF and following Rec Brands, Rec Drinks, and you're paying attention to what they're doing. I'm a huge fan of what you guys have coming up. And I obviously am a huge fan of the product itself. Looking forward to what's next. And again, thank you for coming on, brother.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me, man. Good to catch up as well.
Of course. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one. And peace, brother.
Cheers, guys.